Welcome back to the Average Fisherman, everybody. By the time you see this, it'll be Friday, so happy Friday. And I think it should be about 2:30 in the afternoon. I have it set to release. So no, it's not. I'm not drinking a martini at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is actually Thursday evening for me. Hendrick's Martini is my favorite. Perfect cocktail. Anyway, the topic of today. This is something that I've had discussions with quite a few people, including my fishing buddy, Louisiana Blackwater Fly Fishing. By the way, if you guys haven't seen his videos yet, you need to go out and check his channel out. Really great guy, fly fishes all over the place. He has a lot of videos on how to tie your own flies and everything. There's a wealth of information. Great show. Anyway, the topic that I wanted to discuss, when I'm thinking about making a video, I often go to YouTube and see if anybody else has hit the subject before and what angle they approached it from. This is something I've seen people mention once or twice, but nobody's really had a discussion about it, okay? And because when I look for information on it, it tends to be kind of sparse, or it pulls up a video about lines and then it's like a 10-second mention about it, right? This is something that I've worked on for probably the last 6 or 7 years. And that is braid versus mono for panfish, okay, or small fish, you know, sockeye, chinkapins, bluegills, that kind of thing. Because now, as it stands now, the majority of my panfish setups have 6 or 8 pound braid on it, depending on the brand name, which I'll also get to again. And again, I'm going to show you guys why Hercules braid is the better braid. I know I keep preaching this over and over and over again, but I'm telling you guys, Hercules is the way to go. So, I use both, and I have used both, and you guys have seen me use both on camera, okay? The oddity of that is that the braid that I'm using is based on size or diameter of braid, not necessarily the break strength. So some of them are 6, some of them are 8 pound, but almost all of the monofilament rigs that I have for panfish now are 2 pound mono. I've gone from, you know, I used to use 6 or 8, then I went to like 4s, and now I'm at 2s because it's so much more fun, and the monofilament at 2 pounds handles so much better. Less memory, it's more limp, it casts further, you know, it has plenty of strength and things like that, you know, it doesn't coil up as much, and it's a much better fishing experience at 2 pounds versus 4, 6, or 8, okay? So, let me explain when I use which ones and why, okay? If I'm going strictly for bluegills, and I'm going to be using strictly a slip bobber, okay, that is going to be a rig that I use the 2 pound mono on. Braid, I have found on slip bobber setups especially, tends to slow down the amount or the speed of the line that goes through the cork, so when you throw it out in the water, you know, the weight is pulling line out this way and into the front and down until it hits the bobber stop and makes the cork stand up. Now, at 6 and 8 pound test, all braids are going to be 4 strand. So they're a little rough, okay, even at that thin diameter. And that little bit of roughness is enough to slow down that line going through the bobber, or even sometimes stop it from going through the bobber if the bobber hits at a perfectly horizontal position. And the weights, since I'm fishing panfish, I'm not using 1/8 ounce weights and stuff like that. I'm using very tiny split shots, okay? The smallest ones I can get a hold of, so it's not a lot of weight. And sometimes the resistance of the braid hitting the front of that little bobber is too much to overcome with the weight, and it won't actually sit up, okay? So under those circumstances, I tend to use the monofilaments because, well, they're monos, and it's a slick finish, and it doesn't matter how light the weight is I have hanging down on the other side, it always pulls through, okay? The second circumstance is when I'm not expecting to catch anything other than smaller panfish. So if there's not much risk of me catching bass or, you know, hooking up with the errant, you know, small spotted garfish or something like that, then I will choose the 2 pound mono as well, because I don't need the increased strength of a braid that's, you know, as thin as 1 or 2 pound mono, but has 6 or 8 pounds of tensile strength to possibly horse in something like a small largemouth or something. So under those circumstances, I will also use the 2-pound mono. And there's a third circumstance that some people would disagree with, and I've been kind of wishy-washy on myself, so I admit this. The other circumstance is in highly pressured situations. Not pressured for me, pressured for the fish. So if I'm in an area where there's just a lot of fishing pressure, like lots of people go there, lots of boats and stuff like that, then I will also use mono, because it is a semi-transparent strand, okay, that is less visible depending on the color of the water than an opaque braid, as thin as it may be, okay. Has this really truly made a difference for me? I can't quantify that in numbers to you guys, but there have been several circumstances where I have caught fish, and I have talked, and I've said it on camera when I was out fishing. There's 6 or 8 other boats out there, and I'm the only guy catching fish. So I'm doing something right, okay? So that's another circumstance where I choose mono. Plus, let's just be honest here. Mono's inexpensive, okay? It's not expensive at all. You can go out and pick up pretty much whatever you want in whatever color you want, and you're spending less than $10, okay? So you can usually find, 350 to 500 yard spools of this stuff. If it's big game, you can get like 1,700 yards of stuff for like, $7 or $8. So mono's really economical too. So if you're not the kind of person who has the money for braid to go buy spools of braid and stuff, then obviously mono's the way to go. However, one caveat to this. If you pick the right braid in line, and you are picking one that serves your needs well, and you're not abusing it with stuff like, with thin diameter braids, you can't be throwing it in the rip wrap and stuff like that. You can leave this braid on your reels for much more than a year. Okay, I do have reels in my reel caddy out there that has the same braid on it for the last 2 years. Okay, and it's still perfectly serviceable, no issues or anything like that. It's impervious to the UV light and stuff like that, and most of them are coated now, UV coatings, and it's not going to break down. So you can spend the money on braid and put it on there once and leave it there for like 2 years, unless you're constantly cutting braid off. Okay, so let's go into the 2 braids that I do use for pan fishing. So I use predominantly one of 2 types. Okay, here's the one that I used to use all the time. Okay, and I still have this on some of my reels. I'm going to be honest with you guys, because, well, I bought it. There's no reason to take it off. Okay, so it's still on there. And this is the Suffix Pro Mix 6-pound low vis green. Okay, and this is the fade free, although it does fade. Okay, it doesn't stay this color forever. It kind of fades out to a lighter green over time. All right, so that's one of them that I have. This is the other braid that I have on most of my setups, the Hercules No Fade 8-pound. And it's also in low vis green. This is really no fade. This stuff does not change color. It does not fade out. So what was I saying earlier about the Hercules being superior to the Pro Mix? Sorry, tongue tied. Well, it comes down to 2 things. Cost. This is $12. Okay, if you notice, it's 300 yards. This was a 1,000 yard spool. Okay, and it was $24. Okay, so, all right. Now, the thing is, in America, there's no standards. I've made a video about this before. Manufacturers of these lines can claim whatever pound test they want, and then slap a label on it, and it's good. It's not like that in Japan, and it's not like that in other countries. Okay, they have to be certified to exacting standards. So the line has to be what it says. So 8-pound braid has to be 8-pound braid in Japan. It can't be 10-pound braid with an 8-pound label on it. Okay, it's got to be 8. In the United States, that's not exactly true. So this is a Japanese braid. So 8-pound braid is 8-pound braid. Okay. Now I've seen other videos where they tested this stuff, and this is actually fairly accurate too. This breaks at like just shy of 7 pounds. Okay, this broke at 8.5. Okay, so it's pretty accurate. Both of them are. However, I want you to notice the diameter difference, which was also measured on another video. Okay, this is 6-pound, this is 8-pound, and this is smaller. It's smaller, it doesn't fade, and it's cheaper. So again, Hercules braid comes out on top. This has a diameter of 0.14 millimeters. This is zero point 0.1. So 4 thousandths smaller than this. This actually is accurate at 8 pounds. This breaks just shy of 7. So, about a pound difference strength to this one, but it's 4 thousandths thinner. And the color actually stays true. Okay? This braid, the Pro Mix, actually fades out a little bit lighter than the Hercules does, just FYI. If it doesn't matter to you, don't worry about it. Just use whatever you can get. But I'm telling you guys, the Hercules is the better deal. So my standard mono that I've been using lately, and Blackwater Fly Fishing tried some of this stuff and said he liked it. I haven't been fishing with him when he used it yet, but he said it's one of his new favorites too, is the Trout Magnet SOS in 2 pound with this low vis green. And I really think this color makes a difference, guys. It really does. Even in muddy water, this, for some reason, I don't know, they got the tint of this stuff just right. It really, really does nearly disappear. So the benefits of using the braid versus the monofilament, since I went over the benefits of the monofilament and when I use those. Okay, any kind of tight lining situation, all right, any kind of tight lining situation. In other words, anything else except slip bobber or bobber situations, braid is superior. It's superior in casting distance if you get the right braid and it's small enough, and it's superior in sensitivity. Okay, as you guys know and have seen, I buy my reels based on performance and lightweight. Okay, I buy all of the rods that I own based on how sensitive they are. So I don't scrimp on my equipment. So if I'm fishing for soft-mouthed panfish like crappie or sockeye, being able to detect the bite is paramount. Okay, and braid enables you to do that better than mono. So when you're fishing a tight line, which means basically no bob or anything between it, you're throwing it out and you're letting the weight of the jig head pull it down, and you're jigging them on a tight line like that. Okay, get it? The sensitivity of the line to detect like a little peck, because very rarely do sockeye and stuff like that hammer a bait like a bluegill does or a warmouth does. Okay, sockeye have very delicate mouths. They call them paper mouths for a reason, and they tend not to really slam a bait. Okay, you will detect like a little. It's hard to describe. It's not even really a tick. It's like it's a little on the rod. Okay, just a gentle, surge on the rod, and you'll have to be able to detect that. So monofilament, with its stretchy qualities, depending on what pound test you're using, can actually absorb that little surge to the point where you don't feel it. Okay, and I've had that happen to me before, so it's not like I'm just pulling this out of thin air. That's actually happened to me, where I'm reeling up and don't even realize I have a fish on the line because the mono is stretching and it's actually absorbing any kind of transmission of vibrations through the line, or the fish surging on it, or even just engulfing the bait. I've never felt it because the stretchy nature of mono absorbed that energy. Okay, whereas braid, since it doesn't stretch, that energy gets directly transmitted to the rod and into your hand. So it's more sensitive, and I've missed less fish using braid than I have with mono. I can say that for sure. The other benefit to it is exactly what I said earlier. You buy one spool of braid, like I said, for $24, and this can stay on your reel for years. Okay, unless you're one of those people that constantly is hanging up or something like that, and you have to keep cutting line off. But realistically speaking, this stuff will last for 4 or 5 seasons on your reel. So when I fish mono, I've told you guys to optimize performance. Now, you don't have to do this. I tend to take the monofilament off of my reels about every 7 to 10 days, okay? Because I want the limp line. I don't want it with any memory at all. Memory really aggravates me. So some of you may not be that persnickety about it, but I am. But realistically speaking, even if you're just fishing in the sunlight, after about 6 or 8 months with a 2-pound mono, it's shot. You'll see it's kind of cloudy. It's not as clear as it used to be anymore. You need to change it because it's UV damaged. And especially on a thin line like a 2-pound line, which is super thin, it doesn't take much to weaken that line to the point of failure from UV damage. Whereas the braid, I can leave that on there for years, and then like I said over and over again, I have line on reels out there that's been there for more than 2 years, and it's all Hercules, and it looks still brand new. It still performs the way it did brand new. So, under those circumstances, that is the reason why most of my panfish rod and reel combos now have braid on them. The ones with the slip bobbers and stuff like that, they're still 50-50 because the ones that I have the heavier weights on them, I still use the braid. But if I'm going really ultralight, they almost always have monofilament on them for the reason I stated above. But I'm just being honest with you guys. It's like the old saying goes when it comes to cars that, the old one was there's no replacement for displacement. Well, that's not true anymore, right? So technology is the replacement for displacement now. Well, the same goes to fishing lines. Technology has advanced to the point where they have superior lines out, depending on the circumstances, to monofilaments, even though monofilaments still have their place. And I certainly still love them, and I still use them on plenty of applications. But the Hercules 8-pound, 4-strand, no fade braid, that's where it's at for panfish for me. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Get out there, catch some fish. I, of course, will be working all weekend as normal. So I hope you guys are having a good time. Stay safe and tight lines, my friends.